Hey guys, and welcome back to the Social Saint podcast. I'm really excited to be back today, and I'm excited for today's episode. It's a really interesting episode, and it's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, but I've been really trying to figure out how to talk about it, who to talk about it with, and I'm really excited to be back for season 3 of the Social Saint. So we're starting off with a banger. I've got a very special guest on the podcast today. I've got Pastor Courtney Stewart. Pastor Courtney is obviously, my pastor, and he's been my pastor for 4 years now, going on 5 years, and he pastors Potter's House Lewisham, which is obviously a fantastic church, and so I thought I'd bring on Pastor, you've been on before actually, and you know what, that episode I think is the most liked episode.
Oh wow!
You know, a lot of people always bring it up now because you're talking about ambition and stuff like that. And people are like, it was a really good episode.
Oh wow!
And I've actually re-listened to it. It is a really good episode. So I had to have him back on. So I thought you'd quickly introduce yourself, Pastor. Cool. Say who you are, what you do, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like Rianne said, I'm Courtney. I just introduced myself as Courtney, but Pastor Courtney. I run a small business of my own, and of course a pastor of the church as well. I was nervous the first time, nervous the second time, and so, but that's a little bit about me,
Yeah. So how are you doing? How's life going? Is there anything fun that you're working on that you want?
At this time of year, it is quite exciting because church-wise, I've got my head in the 2022 calendar. So it's very exciting looking at just, praying over things and what God's going to do for the next coming year and stuff. In terms of business, again, equally as well, an exciting time. Bit different this year because of COVID. We've had a lot of our clients have just got this backlog of stuff. So where it would normally be quiet this time of year, it's busy. And so I'm just managing that and stuff. But it's keeping me on my toes. Everything's keeping me on my toes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I watched something recently, and that's what kind of sparked the whole idea to do this podcast. But it was a girl, and I can't remember where she was from. I feel like she was from I can't remember, she was from somewhere in Africa. I feel like it was either Tanzania or Zimbabwe or something like that.
Okay.
And she'd moved over to the UK, or it was the States, I can't remember, but she was basically saying the thing that surprised her the most about being here was when she was back home, she would always look at us or the Western world and be like, oh, people have their own cars, their own houses, their own phones, watches, and they'd have all of this stuff. And then when she came to the West, I can't remember where she was from, but she was she realized people don't own their own house, they have a mortgage, they don't own their car, it's on finance, they don't own their watch, do you get what I mean? And their phones are on contract and stuff like that. And she realized back home, when you have something and you say this is mine, you actually own it. Something isn't yours until you have it. And she said that there was a word for it, and she realized she was using the word to say basically people in the West don't have this thing, they don't own things, if that makes sense. And it made me really think about it because I read an article in The Guardian, and it was basically saying that millennials, BNPL, buy now pay later, is the future of millennial finance.
Right.
And I was literally oh no. Oh gosh. And she's it was basically saying we don't have this concept of actually owning things, we don't care about the value of things. It was really making me think and consider money in general and the idea of owning things. I just thought it was really interesting, and I just thought, you know what, I have to have a conversation about this. And it's so countercultural to be of the opinion, because I know that there's an extreme side of this, because you hear some churches where people the congregation aren't allowed to have a mortgage,
right.
And
I know exactly what you mean.
There's that extreme, and there's okay, that's crazy. But then there's also the idea of okay, don't worry about having anything or actually having to earn things. And I don't know, I've just recently been thinking a lot about society, especially this generation, especially between the ages of 20 and 35. It's there's this concept of money that's just so foreign, if that makes sense. That you don't have to earn things, it's just about what you're perceived to own, if that makes sense. So it's a strange one. Even kind of to add to that as well, there's also a common belief as well in some Christian circles that you should not own anything, right? You just stay away from all materialism, right? And that's kind of taking it to another extreme. Nobody has a house, nobody buys a car. I mean, there are societies and little groups of people, maybe a little bit strange to us, but they won't have
more than 1 or 2 sets of clothes, things like that. Everything's very, very old fashioned. And so that's in an attempt to keep away from all materialism. They don't have mobile phones, nothing like that. Everything's letters and writing and all of that. So there's definitely a lot of warped perspectives on money. And I think this is definitely a very valuable topic, because it's something that we need to get right, you know, definitely for the future.
So for you, what's your like first, because I always ask people this, like, what's your first, do you remember like your first interaction with like money, or your own money, or like one of the first most influential moments you had with money, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I remember. Okay. So I remember having to, like, my parents would make us do like chores at home, right? And we used to just have to do that. That was just standard. There was no money involved. Then we got to a certain age where, you know, my parents started wanting to teach us how to handle money a little bit. So instead of just our basic chores like cleaning our room and, you know, whatever we were assigned, there might be extra things we needed to do, but that was to earn maybe a couple of quid. You know what I'm saying? Just a pound or two, something like that. And we'd take that, and you've got to buy your sweets with that money or whatever. Right. And so that's the earliest that I can remember interacting with money. But the most impactful moment was when I was 15, and a friend of mine, his mum, he was my best friend at the time, his mum used to run a stall in Greenwich Market, and she made handbags, and she would sell them. And so she was having a staffing issue, and I don't even know how this happened, but I ended up working on her market stall, selling handbags at 15 years old. And so I'm trying to sell handbags to people. And back then, I mean, I was getting like, I think it was like £50 a day or something like that. But that was, to me, that was massive money. I was going to the cinema, my pockets were jingling, you know what I'm saying? Hey, listen, man, them days, boy. So that's my most impactful, because that changed a part of how I was living at the time. So I could do things, and I'd earned all that money myself. And so there was a kind of healthy sense of pride about it. Like, I earned this, you know what I'm saying? And I can do something with it. So that's what I remember the most.
It's actually so true, because that kind of first job, it really impacts. I realize now, different people, the way they treat money, and then when you ask them what they did for their first job, or when they had their first job, it actually influences how they act. Because for me, I had my first job, I think I got it in year 7.
Right.
And I was a paper guy. I think most people did paper round. But paper round was, I want my kids to do paper round, because it was a serious experience. Like, me and my brother both did it. And I feel like we were up, like, we used to get up at like 4 or like 4:30, do paper round, get home, shower, get changed ready for like school, and then go to school. And like, I think we got paid some like it was such bad money. I can't remember what it was, but it was just like just ridiculously, like, this is like ridiculous. Like, I just remember thinking, this is just absolutely absurd. But that paper round, like, my brother used to be like, okay, if I do this many, like, if I do 2 weeks paper round, I can buy like an Xbox game. Do you get what I mean?
Exactly.
And like, he had his, and I was like, okay, cool. If I save this much, then I can do this with it. And it's so weird, because that like little bit of money had such an effect on like how I treated money. Because we was like, growing up, obviously we never just like handed money like that, but obviously we didn't ever not have things that we needed. So when we wanted extra things, like you said, we kind of had to earn it or whatever. But having paper round, it really showed me, because when I wanted to spend my money, I would really think like, okay, remember, if you spend this is like this many days worth of work. This is many, like, you had to wake up at this o'clock in the morning to get it. Is it worth sweets? Like, do you sure you want to spend that money on sweets?
Very good.
You sure you don't want to spend it on clothes? Like, something that has a bit more. So that kind of like really made me think of the value of even £1.
What's interesting about what you said is that the first thought that's come to mind when you start dealing with money after you've earned it is you start thinking about the work hours that would cost. So it's no longer £10. When I don't know, boss man at the sweet shop says this is £10, you're thinking £10 is 3 hours. No, I'm not thinking about £10. You're not thinking about the note anymore. You're thinking about how much work. And that's the problem. With it ties in with the klarna and all of that. That you start to see things as, oh, it's just £10 instead of the work hours. And that's what we should be thinking is, how much work do I have to put in to cover that? Right? How many hours did I have to work to afford that? Do I really want that now, or do I want to put it to something more meaningful? You're right.
I was like I said, I was reading something in the Guardian the other day about like Klarna and like ClearPay and all of these like kind of things that they have on like clothes like stores where you can buy for something and pay later. And it was basically saying like, is putting loads of young people in debt.
Yeah,
like,
crazy,
a lot of
crazy
young people in debt, and it's really sad.
You'd be surprised the kind of bill that you can rack up on just clothes or things like that. But
and it's crazy because like I remember we was in like I think. Yeah, I mentioned this, obviously, Jamal was on the last podcast and we mentioned his store and stuff like that. And me and him were talking about his store and how, like, the first person to buy something was someone buying something for their daughter.
Yes.
And they bought her 2 pairs of trainers. But those Jordan ones are, like, £300. And I was like, he spent, like, £600, so £800 or something on trainers for a girl, like, which, okay, now... it's not about the trainer itself and the value, and I'm not getting into that. But I just realized, like, wow, like, back in the day, there's no way you could ask even one pair of £300 trainers.
This is it.
I could, like, when I told my mum how much, like, stuff costs, she's like, what? Like, what? So, like, I can't even imagine. Like, I even feel like I should lie to her about the price of things. Even though it's not mad, because I know people are spending way more, and I'm spending money I actually have. But it's crazy because I was just thinking, like, obviously, okay, there's a level of inflation to it. Don't get me wrong, because I saw somewhere that, like, back in the day, you know, like Star Wars toys, for example. There's some things every year at Christmas that are like always a hit. For example, Star Wars Lego. Okay. So like back in the day, like 30 years ago, it was I don't know anything about Star Wars, but like now it's like the Millennial Falcon, and that's like worth £100. It's like wow, spending £100 on Lego
because of collectors and stuff.
But it's just like crazy because I was just thinking, like, now Christmas is so expensive in general, and that's another reason for doing this podcast, because Christmas is coming up. But like, things are so expensive these days that people spend money on their kids. But also, I feel like younger people have way nicer things. Like, I don't remember having £300 trainers at all in my life.
I can tell you now for free. You know, my mum and dad, they always provided for us. We never went without. You know, set great examples for us and everything. But I will never forget the day. I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but back in the day, high tech was dead, dead. And all my friends had like kickers and stuff like that and all of that. I didn't have no pair of kickers. And my dad sent me to school with some high techs to play football in. And I got bantered in the playground. I mean, for weeks and weeks and weeks. And but it's good though, because indirectly is teaching me something, that if you want nice things, you have to earn nice things, you know. And I'm glad I mentioned it recently, I think, to the church, that I'm thankful for my dad that he didn't really just give me handouts like that, because that would have killed something of character. You know what I'm saying? And so that's definitely an issue. And the Christmas situation is terrible.
It's
a terrible thing.
Bad. It is ridiculous. Like it's like, I think I read somewhere, I actually wrote it down. I think it was credit card consumer debt was just over in the UK 200 billion last December.
Wow.
200 billion.
Yeah, consumer debt. Yeah, and so this is
not money that you
it's
have.
Ridiculous.
Credit card debt.
Ridiculous.
£200 billion. You know, sometimes when I even spend £100, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to pay that back on my credit card. Like,
yeah.
I just think, how does it, like, that is ridiculous.
Do you know what people need to do? They need to start withdrawing their wages in cash.
Yeah.
And then parting with that money in cash and see how much they spend. They won't spend the same amount of money. I can tell you that for free. But Christmas has become something else now. And it's quite sad, because obviously, you know, as Christians, we know the reason for the season. You know, it's all about Jesus Christ and the free gift of salvation. It's quite ironic, the free gift of salvation, right? Exactly. But now it's become this commercialized burden. And now you see a lot of people, they might smile, they might eat the mince pies and stuff, but they're actually fretting in their minds about, man, I've got to keep up with this family member. Everyone's going to be revealing their presents and stuff. And what if my present's the worst, or it's the least expensive and stuff? And so I always advise people, when it comes to Christmas time, cut your cloth accordingly. Don't get into debt over Christmas. The chances are, come, you know, February, no one's even going to remember. They're not even going to remember whether or not, I mean, there's gifts that I've received and stuff, you know, and there's some that I'm like, who got me that? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you can't even remember. And so it's, you know, people get into debt and all kinds of problems. And the problem is, it's a cycle. Christmas comes, right? They rack up all this debt and they spend the next 12 months trying to clear it. Some don't even get to clear it, but then Christmas is here again and they go through the same thing again. And it's a vicious cycle. And that's the problem with debt. I think that my advice to anyone really when it comes to Christmas, and I've said this many, many times, is just don't get into, just do what you can do. It's nice to bless people and be nice to your family, what you can, but do what you can do, not what's, you know.
I think as well, like, it's interesting because, I mean, it's a joke, obviously, but one thing I was saying to my friend the other day, I was like, if God could rewrite anything in the Bible, I'm sure he'd write the root of all evil is social media, not money. Because I swear, like, social media, when you boil it down, it always boils back down. Some social media's in there somewhere. And I was thinking about it with this klarna, because I read another thing, back to the point we were talking about before. It was basically saying 2.6 million people increased their use of buy now, pay later, with 25% of them being 18 to 24-year-olds and 50% of them being 25 to 36-year-olds.
Wow.
75% of the total users are women. And I actually was thinking about it, and I was thinking about Christmas as well, and like mums who go all out at Christmas, because that's how it usually is. Like they you know, they know what the kids want and they go all out. And especially with women specifically, I think that social media as well puts this added pressure on you. Because you see people, and it's not like, you know, where some guys can have like 3 pairs of good jeans. Do you get what I mean? And that's it. Those are I got my black ones, and my blue ones, my grey ones, or, you know. But with women, it's like you've got to have a dress for this, a dress for that, a dress, your work stuff, this stuff. And I mean, everyone has to have different clothes and stuff like that. But I realize now, like, there's such a, like, women, like, especially young women, like, between the age of 20 to 25 are such the target of all of this, like, social media influencing. And it does have, like, it grates away. Like, I'd be lying if I said it's never affected me. Like, there's stuff that I thought, I'll never buy that. And then slowly but surely it grates away at me. And I'm like, oh, but maybe I do need this because everyone has it. Do you get what I mean? And it was really interesting because I was also thinking about Christmas, where before it would be like Christmas and then you'd have to wait like another week until you go back to school and show everyone what you got for Christmas. Now kids go on social media and can instantly compare what they got for Christmas. So it's like where you can, before it would like, okay, cool, I have a few days to enjoy the gift and like be like, okay, I actually like this, thanks mom and dad, I see how you went out of your way for it. Now it's like, oh, but Johnny has this, you know what I mean? And I feel like social media makes, like I said, women and parents in general feel this another level of pressure to spend money that they don't have. And it's actually really, 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 really sad. And it's like, it ultimately never fulfills you, first of all. Like, whether your kid's not going to care in 10 years' time. Like, think about all the gifts that we had when we were younger that we didn't like. Like or little things that you think, oh, but I would have wanted that. You don't remember it now. Do you get what I mean? You don't think about those things now. And just like, if I buy something that's in fashion now, it probably won't be in fashion in 5 years' time. Do you get what I mean? So why break the bank and put yourself in debt with potential interest on it? For it's just not, it's never ever worth it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem as well. And you mentioned something there about interest. One of the sad things about interest is that for most people, compound interest is working against them, not for them, right? And so when they get into trouble with these credit card companies and, like you said, these buy it now or have it now, pay later things, you know, the interest builds up, and because they can't pay it all off in time, there's interest on top of interest. And this is where I believe it's in the book of Proverbs, the Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender. It's like it's a ball and chain, you know what I'm saying? It's literally shackles. And so it's a sad situation. That is the society that we're living in. That is the agenda that's being pushed. And these companies, they thrive off of it. That's how they pay their employees. That's how they make their money.
This is why you can't fall for the holiday thing, because there's always another holiday. So Christmas comes, exactly. And then but you blink and it's Valentine's Day. You blink and then it's Easter. You blink and then it's like bank holiday. Then you then it's the summers. They've got that long spread of summer. Then it's like another holiday, and it's like there's always something else. Like, you can't give into the like whole thing of every holiday I have to do something. That's why when they're making up these new holidays, I'm like, where does this come from?
I know. Trying to commercialize everything.
Last year, what was it? Something came up and I was like, I'm sure this was not a holiday before. Can't remember. Or someone bought a gift. Okay, no, not to throw shade on this day, but I think it was International Women's Day.
Okay,
and someone bought a gift for someone, and I was like, okay, obviously we can celebrate that in, you know, different ways. And but I was like, are we gonna start saying now we have to do gifts for internet? Because I'm not doing that. I'm gonna be honest here. Like, as much as obviously I'm a woman.
Google it. There's like Brother's Day, Sister's Day. There's all of it.
National Sibling Day.
There's all of it. There's all of it.
If you give in to all of them, that's what they want. That's what. Isn't that capitalism at its finest? But no, it's really interesting. Before I went to uni, I was sitting in you know, that sixth form, they do those things where they tell you about uni because they're trying to get everyone to apply through UCAS.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and they kept being like, yeah, and you get free this and free. And I kept thinking, this can't all be free. Like, yeah,
there has to be a catch.
Yeah, you get free, basically a free accommodation, and your course is basically free because you don't pay your tuition. And it kind of, well, you do pay, but like in 20 years, like they kind of get like, and I was thinking, this doesn't add up. And then when you get to uni, you're broke, and I was like, no one told me about this part of uni.
Yeah,
and really, it's not free because now I tell you, like, this student loan money is coming back out of my paychecks every month. So whoever lied to me telling me that uni was free, I want your phone number. Because like they basically made it seem like it was, but that's when I first came confronted with like debt, because I like would see my friends be like £1,500 into their overdraft, and I was just like, that is crazy to me. And I don't know, what's like was your first understanding of debt? Because I find it so interesting.
Well, I've heard a lot of stories. I didn't go uni myself, so I didn't get that, initial offer of overdraft and things like that. But I know that there is a real strategy behind that, and that is to try and trap students into a credit card. Showing them money that some have never seen it on that scale before, and certainly not handled a loan on that scale before. And then, the obvious is going to happen. People are going to start spending recklessly. As far as I'm aware, for a lot of people, the uni culture is a lot of party life and things like that. Like I said, I didn't go, but maybe that's adding to it, because then it's like, all right, everyone's going out this weekend. I've run out of money. I got this shiny new credit card. You know what I'm saying? I'll just do £100 on that. You know what I'm saying? And then before you know it, that's every week. It's built up. It's thousands of pounds, and you can't pay back the interest, right? Because you need your other money, your student loan and all that to survive. So it traps many people in. So the 3-4 years that they do in uni, many come out with that same debt at the end, and it's got worse because of interest and all of that. Their credit ratings, been destroyed and stuff. And so debt really, I mean, it is a killer in many senses. And if someone is in debt, really, they do need to get out of debt as soon as possible, because debt has it's got that cycle to it, and it has the ability to something as small as, or seemingly small as, a real easy credit card at such a young age can affect you all the way into your 30s, 40s, financial decisions. I was speaking with a pastor recently, and he said, one of the things that, even though he's been forgiven of, which is under the blood, it was before he got saved, he still finds himself getting angry about sometimes is his previous financial decisions before he got saved. And the thing that he said is that those decisions are still affecting him and his family till today. And we're talking about decades later. And so he thinks about it, and he's like, man, maybe I would be in a different place right now. Maybe I'd have a bit more to my name right now. Maybe for my kids, I'd be able to pass on a bit more had that not happened. And, God is good. God's able to redeem us and build us back up and give us a second chance. But there's real consequences to our financial decisions. And so debt really does have that effect, I think I 100% agree. And I think what's interesting is it goes back to what we were saying at the start about like what taught us what money was. But I think it goes back down to like your perception of what money is, because really and truly money is like it's a trading tool. It's something you do to give it's just basically a unit of measure to trade. And it's interesting because I was doing like a crypto course a little while ago, and it was basically saying back in the day people used to trade seashells, that's what that was like one of the first like things that people used to trade, or like to measure what they were trading, and it was quite interesting. And I was just thinking about like really and truly this all goes down to people's perception of what money is. And like when it comes to debt, it really is interesting because you put yourself in debt, and like you said, you don't think about when you're spending money at uni, for example, and you put yourself like £1,500 into your overdraft or something. It's not necessarily about the money, because you can get a job and pay that back. Okay, cool. But it's the action of spending money you didn't have to spend. And there's some people, don't get me wrong, I want to make this clear. There's some people that in uni that didn't have a choice other than to spend their overdraft, because there was times, even for me, my rent was more expensive than my student loan, for example. And the letting agents know what they're doing. Student finance know what they're doing. It's not by coincidence. You put where you're living on your student finance form. You tell them how much the rent costs on average, and they still give you less. They still approve it.
Yeah, they still approve less. So it's not something that you could have helped, because I know that was my situation, and that was the situation of loads of people, even someone like me who worked throughout uni. I still had problems like paying off my rent, and that was before I even spent money on food or clothes or anything. So I want, like, obviously there are people that do have to spend that overdraft, and not everyone has the like, are fortunate to have like family to borrow money from if anything goes wrong, because it is your kind of first time away from home. But that whole, it's more about the way that you treat money that then lasts into your after uni, because you have this money that you have to pay off, then you get a job and you have to pay it off, but the whole way that you treat money of, I can always just dip in, you treat your credit card like that. I'll just dip in, I'll just dip in. And it's that attitude. You might scroll down Instagram and see one person that's just bought a house, one person that's just gone on a really nice holiday, one person that's just bought a new car, one person that's just bought a Rolex, but instead of you thinking these are all different people who have all acquired things differently, you think the whole thing. I think I need to have a car, a Rolex, and a holiday, and you get what I mean?
And none of them have it all.
And then none of them have it all. But no one sees it like that. It's like a fake world. And like I said, it goes back to that whole thing of like, you put yourself in debt trying to keep up with something that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, but you know what's mad as well, though, is that what I realized is early on in my financial journeys, I realized I was buying certain things just to impress people, right? Yeah. And the worst thing is they're not even friends. Trying to impress people that I don't like, and they probably don't like me. You know what I'm saying? And you think about how mad that is. You know what I'm saying? That you're going to take your hard-earned money and say, I need to buy this because then these people are going to look at me a certain way, right? And you know that's going to put you in financial problems, right? But you still go ahead and do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's very short-term thinking. I think it stems from a lot of insecurity. People find their validation, their worth from people's responses to what they have. And that's why there's such a drive on social media, you know, like we said, there's such a drive to that, because people are like, no, I've got to show everyone what I have. As soon as, you know, it's the person that, you know, it's got a poverty mentality, but as soon as they get £400, they buy a £350 belt. So, okay. Bro, what are you going to wear that with? You know what I'm saying? Think about it for a sec. Exactly. Your belt is £350 and your jeans are going to be, what, £3.50? You know what I'm saying? Your trainers are going to be £10, blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't make sense. But that's the world that we live in. And then they'll be showing that belt. You know what I'm saying? Look what I've got.
And then the belt is hanging down here because they're always hanging. The belt isn't even doing what the belt's supposed to do.
The belt's not even doing what it's supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? And it is ridiculous. But I think there's a lot of insecurity in that. There's a lot of, and if you really stem back, there's a lot of kids growing up without their parents, without both parents at home. A lot of people growing up in difficult circumstances, which fuels and breeds that insecurity. So instead of getting validation from their parents and that kind of affirmation and, you know, I'm proud of you, son or daughter, or, you know, this is how you ought to live. Instead, their role models are out there on the streets in the world, and that's just how they're thinking, is like, man, as soon as I get something, I got to show them. You know what I'm saying? I've got to show them. And that's what part of where the problem is, definitely.
How do you think being saved, because I know it made a massive impact, but how do you think being saved has affected your perception of money and debt and credit and all of that kind of thing?
Dramatically. I got saved quite young. I was 17 when I got saved, so I thankfully I hadn't made too many bad financial choices that were like life changing. But I can tell you my mentality toward money changed a lot when I got saved. Like I said earlier, I was taught a decent work ethic even before I got saved, just as a young child and things. And so I learned the value of money pretty quickly and quite well, I would say. But when I got saved, I learned things like generosity to other people. That it's not just all about me. And just many things, just the idea of debt itself and what that can do, how that destroys not just you, those around you as well, how it affects people around you. And so, my mentality on money changed a lot when I got saved. The more I think about it.
I think so too. And I think obviously, like, you get saved and then you have to like give and you have to like bless other people. But the whole idea of like giving and tithing and blessing other people, it makes you think about what it means to have two. Do you get what I mean? Because you realize how far your money can go. Because for example, say a speaker in church costs like £500, for example, or something like that. You think, okay, cool, I can have that £500 and I can do this, or I can give it to church, or like something as small as like, okay, cool, I can go out to Nando's, or I can go. Maybe I might go to Hakkasan, for example, or I could take 3 people out to Nando's. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And like, okay, cool. I'm not trying to be like the good Samaritan or like super spiritual, but you realize like you can help other people. Like, there's other ways to do things for other people. And when you realize how, like, I think one thing about church is you're mixed with people that you wouldn't necessarily ordinarily have been around.
Definitely.
So then you find out people's financial circumstances, and it makes you really think about your own.
Yeah.
And I feel like I remember really early on, I think it was early on, when I was in church, I went to a Bible study with Benga, and I remember Benga was there, Hannah obviously, Nikki, Jamal, and I think we're there, and we were just all talking about money, and we'd all kind of come from like different places, if that makes sense. And we were just talking about like what we do with our money and how the order of things,
right?
And like how we kind of distribute our money, and obviously we were all saved and stuff like that. Sorry if you didn't know who those people were; it's irrelevant to the story. But we were just all talking about it, and I remember that that conversation really impacted like the way that I saw money, if that makes sense. And I had already made up my mind at that point before that was already given in tithing. So it wasn't even about that, but just more about like, we always say that like, okay, cool, you can give God the 10%, but what do you do with the 90? And we always talk about that and like the importance of it. But stewardship, but also like, I think that there's this like, you know, the idea of clinging to money, it just feels so ungodly to me. Do you get what I mean? Like if anything, if at any point I want to cling on to anything, it makes me question, am I trusting in that thing more than God?
Yeah.
And I think money is that particular thing that a lot of people have that with.
Oh, yeah.
They find a lot of security in money.
Yeah.
So even if you can be saved and not have made bad decisions with money, if your security comes in the amount that you have, or the money you have, or the money you can acquire even, that's still not godly, if that makes sense. And I think that was the biggest thing I feel like I learned, because I've never been bad with money. I've never made bad decisions with money, but I definitely felt like a level of not spiritual, but like protection that would have been that is spiritual almost. That should feel from God, not from money, if that makes sense. So I felt like when I got saved, that was the biggest lesson to me, that like you shouldn't feel secure in like whether you have £1 or £100 in your account. God is what that is what protects you and guides you and gives you what you need. And I feel like that for me was the biggest kind of lesson I learned. But I also learned about setting financial goals, and I feel like that was something I more learned obviously through sermons and just through like things that we like kind of heard in church. But I think financial goals are really interesting. What would you say are like some good healthy financial goals that you think like everyone should have? Because I think one time you told me, and I remember this early on, about having like enough for like 3 months salary, or like to live for 3 months if you lose your job, and then 6 months and then build it up or whatever. And there were some good things that you said, but I thought it would be worth mentioning.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the first thing in terms of like saving, investing, people hear this term investing all the time, or what should I do, you know? One of the things I advise people a lot of the time is to have between 3 and 6 months of your realistic expenses, monthly expenses, have that in a savings account that you can access pretty easily. Like you don't have to apply to the bank and say, oh, in 60 days I need this money. Something that you can take out pretty easy. The reason being is that's like your emergency fund. And you build up that emergency fund because you just don't know what will happen, right? And many people in the pandemic found out that, you know, when it really gets down to it, no matter how good they've been for their employers, no matter how long they've been there, at the end of the day, they are just still a number. And if the business has to cut people or make people redundant, then that's what businesses have done. And so many people lost their jobs. Some didn't have that kind of backing. And immediately it puts them and their families in a real financial predicament. So that is to include all the expenses, rent, food, household bills, you know, your car expenses, everything for 3 to 6 months. If you can get 6 months, that's great. I mean, some people go as far as 12 months. I mean, hey, each to their own. I'd say 6 months is ample. But 6 months or so, have that aside. Then after that, my honest opinion is, I don't think that money should just sit in a savings account outside of that. Because in a savings account, you're losing money. Inflation's working against you. There's not a savings account out there right now that I can see anyway that's keeping up with inflation. And so inflation's killing you. So every year you're losing money. And all the banks doing, I was saying this to someone yesterday, all the banks doing is they're taking your money and they're investing it, making money, paying their staff. And you've just got the same thing, right? You don't get any benefit from that. So why don't you take your money, invest it? And you know, investment doesn't have to be scary. It can be very basic, very controlled, you know, low risk, but still keeping you in the plus when it comes to the whole inflation thing. And
what are some examples of like low risk safe investments?
Oh yeah, so I would always recommend, especially if you're starting out and you're not too sure, just index funds. Index funds are very, very safe. Overall, you look at the graphs of a market, let's say, for example, the FTSE 100 or FTSE 250 or even the S&P 500 in America. Most of those graphs, in fact, all of those graphs over the decades that they've been going, it's always been an upward climb, right? And so I think the average on the S&P 500, if I remember right, is about 6 to 8% over any 10-year period, right? And so that's a very safe, secure 6 to 8% per year, should I say, over any given 10-year period. So it has its ups and downs, but if you give it 10 years, there's always an increase. And so that's something that people can invest in very, very safely, relatively safe. You know, nothing's guaranteed, but quite safe and secure. And I think that, you know, that can bring about decent returns instead of it just sitting in a savings account. Sometimes people feel more secure when it's just in a savings account. They can see it there. I'd only really recommend that if you are saving to buy something. So if you are trying to buy a new car, you're saving up money and you're putting it aside, you know you're going to use that money soon. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Put that in a savings account. Don't put that in investments, because you don't want to get to the point where you want to buy your new car and your investment's on a little bit of a dip and then you draw out at the wrong time. You don't want that. You only want to put stuff in there that's for the long term. And so if you're trying to buy something, keep that in your savings account. But outside of that, I think really we should be looking at ways to try and make that money earn us more money. You know what I'm saying? Get some interest on that. And so those are a couple of examples of that. But investment could be anything, could be far and wide. You could start a small business. You could turn a hobby into something that generates some money. You know, you monetize something and you could put some money toward that, and you know, hopefully you see a return. You know,
it's a good point. I definitely think investment is extremely important. Like, I think that it's interesting because people obviously only, and I think where older generations have only ever really talked about save. But like you said, saving is in basic savings accounts with the interest at the moment. This point, like you already said, you're losing money. Like, it does not make sense. Your £1 will turn into 75p over the course of 5 years. Like, it's not worth it. And I think this is something that is really key and isn't being said. But I think a lot of people hear the word investment and they freak out. And I think we can't, because it's in our own interest to go out and do research and find what we can do to support and look after our future. And I think that is one of the things. I also kind of wanted to talk about this idea of like good debt,
right?
Because like, obviously there's bad debt, and we know what that means, and that's like not, you should have, and in any case really you should avoid really owing people money or stuff like that. Actually, before we kind of go into like good debt, what is just quickly, if someone is in debt, just in case there's someone watching this that has got debt that they need to pay off, what is like your way, what would you suggest in terms of like paying it off? Like,
cool. Most people that are in debt don't just have one debt. They have a few. Right. So this is my honest opinion. There are many different methods of how to do this, but I think this is the best way. If you owe 4 creditors, right? We'll keep the numbers very basic so that it's easy to understand. If you owe 4 creditors and their minimum payment is £10 each, right? You've got £100 disposable income after all of your budgeting. You take that £100 and you pay them all £10 each. So they're all satisfied at their basic level. My opinion is you work from the smallest to the largest and you take the remaining £60, pay it directly on the smallest, right? Then every month you pay that until the smallest is done. Then you take that £60 and the £10 that was going toward that smallest one and you pay 70 on top to the next largest one, right? And you keep going to the largest. You snowball effect it. And so the reason why I think that's good, instead of going for the largest first to the smallest, is psychologically it helps us. There's a sense of achievement when you've conquered one, and that sense of achievement of conquering one will come a lot sooner if you do it that way round than the other way round. The other way round could get a bit disheartening to try and tackle the first one and even the second one, but the first and second and third will seem relatively easier, and it means that you're building up more disposable income to target the large one when you get to it. Now, the only thing to consider with that is if they are charging you more interest for holding it and just paying the minimum balance. So you got to be careful with that. If you've got one that's quite aggressive and they're saying, no, we're going to charge you this, and you might have to target that one first to reduce your interest. That may be wisdom, but each situation is different. But if they're not aggressive like that and you can satisfy them with the minimum payments for now, you want to target the smallest first, ideally. The other thing to remember as well is you will get out of debt quicker if you create more disposable income. Either you can earn more money, find a way to earn more money if you can. If you can't do that, find a way to reduce your expenses. Sometimes people's debt, you can clearly see what it is. Like, you're living in a house that you can't afford. Right? Change your living conditions. Drop the pride. Don't worry about, people are going to think. Now you've got to think about 10 years from now, what's this doing to me, And so if you've got to drop that so that you can create more disposable income, it means you'll get out of debt quicker. Then you can start living life how you want to live, you know?
I think my only suggestion on top of that would be, but if those are credit cards or like accounts, try not to close the accounts immediately, because sometimes when you have less credit spread over, your more debt spread over less cards, it can affect your credit score. So be careful to close them at the right time. Even if you cleared the debt on them, maybe leave it open until you've tackled more of your debt, so it's spread out. It seems like it's spread out across more, but you can do research on that. What's his name? Martin Lewis, the saving expert. He's got some good
he's got some good. It's about credit utilization. How much you're using.
So be careful of all those kind of things. But definitely, I thought I'd touch on that because after that, I kind of wanted to touch on like good debt, because there is a way to use quote unquote debt to benefit you. And I've actually done this myself. So I had a goal of getting a certain amount of a certain credit score. I think that was my financial goal. So I wanted to get like the perfect credit score and like Experian. So the way that I kind of like did it was like I kind of used like quote unquote good debt. So like I had a direct debit, like all the basic things that you should do. Like if you are looking to improve your credit score, some of the things you can do is get a direct debit, get a credit card. Obviously make sure that you're not in crazy debt anywhere, and like look after your accounts and stuff like that. But one of the things that I also did was take something out on finance, so that I was paying it back, and that really improved my credit score. But that could be seen as like debt because it's like not something I own, but obviously I knew I could afford the thing that I was buying, so I knew it was this amount of money, and I could have just got that money out of my account and paid for it. But like I said, because I wanted to improve my credit, I did it on finance, but used the paying it back, and it was 0% interest. There was no interest on it, so it wasn't like I was paying more for the thing. So there was it was literally 0% interest. I was paying the exact same amount as I would have been paying if I paid it outright, but I did it over the course of a certain amount of time so that I could have and it did improve my credit score quite good. So there's these little things you can do to use, but I feel like you should only do that once you're in a good standing with your money. Don't like try and do that if you've still got debt. But there are things you can do to use debt, quote unquote, to benefit you. But like I said, there's no like good. There's not really anything as such thing as good debt because it's not money. It's
a very you have to navigate this one very carefully because people can misunderstand good debt. Debt really, bad debt, let's clarify bad debt. Bad debt is buying on credit anything that you're going to really consume. Consumer items shouldn't be bought on credit, right? So consumer items, anything from clothing to your day-to-day food, coffee, and all of those things, that would be considered bad debt, right? Really good debt is using debt to either make you more money. Now this again, I need to just throw out a few disclaimers in a moment, or like you said and explained, which is going to put you in something that's going to put you in a stronger financial position, right? So there's an end goal here, right? You spread the thing out on finance so that you can improve your credit score. Why improve your credit score? Well, when I take out a loan, I'll get a lower interest rate. When I go to buy a house, I get a lower interest rate. I'm more likely to be accepted for a house. Those things is going to help you financially, right? So you're going to save money in the long run by doing that. You could use debt in a good way to start a business. A lot of businesses start like that, or at least when they get to a certain level, they need a business loan to get to the next level, right? That's common knowledge. A mortgage is usually considered good debt. Mortgages can go wrong. Please don't buy into the lie that every house is a good house. It's not true. Not every house purchase is a good purchase. You can lose money on a house, right? And so it's
not always an appreciating asset.
Exactly. And so again, I'm not anti-house. Hey, you buy houses, that's all good. I'm not against mortgages or anything like that. But I am against the idea that just because you bought property, it's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So good debt is usually considered something that's going to make you more money or put you in a stronger financial position to make more money or save more money later on. And that's pretty much it. But a lot of people kind of grey those lines, and so you go to buy something. I'm going to buy this new suit, let me do it on my credit card. Well, and they're justifying, well, it's kind of good because it's going to help me a little bit with work. Maybe I'll get some money, or maybe people will take me more seriously. No. That's a consumer item. Just be real with yourself. Is this directly going to make you some money? Or is it going to seriously save you some money or put you in a stronger financial position? If the answer is no, then it's really bad debt.
And be careful, because there's so many like little snares, I feel like, that we don't see, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I have an Amex, and it has this thing that if you spend like £1,000 a month on it, you get 1,000 Avos points, and then like Avos points gets you money for flights. But if you buy them with British Airways, but then you have to be careful, because like £1,000 for some people might not be a lot of money to spend in a month or whatever, and for some people it's like hardly anything. But like, the idea is that if they're getting you to spend 12 grand over the course of a year, which once again might not be a lot of money to some people, but it might not have been 12 grand you had to spend to get money off of a flight, which is still a thing you might not have done. So then you kind of end up spending money you wouldn't. And it's like when things are on sale, and it's like, I would have never bought it before. It's on sale, so now I have to buy it. It's that same kind of mentality. And be careful, because this is me recently. I was like, I have to spend this money because I have to get these AWOS points. And I was thinking, these AWOS points, I'm spending the same money I could just save and spend on the flight itself.
Exactly.
Why am I spending money?
It's funny
to get
because
points? Like,
I had the exact same thing. I had an Amex British Airways card, and I remember kind of just, I was seeing that, there's the Avios, man. I could just boost up my flights and stuff. But I was thinking, I don't even use British Airways in the first place. More times when I'm looking for flights, I go on Skyscanner and I'm looking for, the deals and stuff.
Delta
all right, maybe not that bad, you know what I'm saying? Okay, all right, but I wouldn't even be looking for British Airways. You know what I'm saying? There's airlines that I'd prefer over British Airways, which would be cheaper or if not the same. So they've kind of forced you in a certain direction. And then the deal that I'd get at British Airways wouldn't be the deal I'd normally get. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm actually losing control. Like this isn't what I signed up for. You know what I'm saying?
You end up falling into a trap. Like, unless you're always going to a certain place that only flies British, it doesn't really benefit you. Like, I just realized recently, I was like, I have to spend this money. I was like, the money I'm spending, I could literally directly just save that money and spend it on the flight. Why am I going this long way around? I mean, there are benefits to having certain credit cards like Amex and stuff like that have other benefits. I mean, if you're like a mum or like a parent at all, like, you can use them directly to get nectar points, which you can use to get money for food at Sainsbury's. So there's other ways to, and you've got to look into these things, because there's loads of actually ways to use these kind of things like credit card, good debt, to get money off of certain things which you would ordinarily spend. Like, you are gonna have to do food shopping, so if you can get like, I don't know, like £50 off your Christmas shop at Sainsbury's, maybe that is something that's more realistic. So there are other things, whereas a flight might not be something that's up. You kind of have to but there's always like ways to get more money out of your money, if that makes sense. But there are little snares where they are trying to get you to spend money that you wouldn't have normally spend. Yeah, and I would say I'm fairly good with money, and even I fell for that. And I was like, hold on, like, this is not working out to my benefit. But I kind of also wanted to touch on two more things briefly. And the first one is kind of like, why do you think this stuff isn't taught in school? Because I think it's quite sad that I don't think any of this stuff, money, mortgages, saving, investing, I don't like, some people would say it's on the parents to teach, and I do think there's a certain responsibility from parents. We'll kind of go into that. That's the second point I want to make. But I also think it's quite sad because some people just won't have access to that kind of thing. It's not given that you're going to have parents that are just in a fantastic understanding of money. Yeah. And it could very easily be taught in school. And I don't know, I feel like this education system in a way kind of fails us in that sense because, I mean, obviously it's never going to be set up to let us like prosper because who would that benefit if no one's in debt? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But at the same time, I do find it quite sad because it's like there's an ample amount of time that we could make in the curriculum for people to learn these things.
Well, I'll definitely first of all say that, in terms of what's going to benefit you in life, money skills, I can't think of, I mean, maybe about a few decades ago, maybe you're reading and writing, but even now, reading and writing with computers and stuff, I mean, your handwriting could be terrible and you can thrive in, you know, so I can't think of anything that's more important to our day-to-day living than money skills. And so it is very strange. There's a massive question mark as to why this isn't part of the regular curriculum, right? And it shouldn't be something that has to be, like, I'm part of a group of local ministers and we're talking about, we've got plans to set up like a supplementary school, right? And so part of that is to teach money skills to young kids and stuff in the area, in the community. But why does that have to be set up by supplementary schools? Why does it have to be set up by local ministers? Why isn't that in the regular curriculum? It kind of reveals that there's got to be a little bit of an agenda behind it because, like you said, if everyone was so clued up, maybe, you know, all these big companies wouldn't make the money that they make. And that's just the reality of it. Maybe that's part of it. But I do think, there's definitely a failure. However, I do think on the other side of that coin, there is also an over-reliance on schools to teach children everything, right? And I do think, and I really do believe that there are difficult circumstances, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, parents should have more influence over their children, right, than a teacher should, right? And so what I mean by that is that in some cultures and some upbringings, it's just like, go to school, read your books. You know what I'm saying? Go to school, read your books. Go to school, read your books. And there is the capacity for parents to be more involved in their children's lives. But it's more like, just you do your thing. You know what I'm saying? And I'll do whatever I'm doing. But you just go and read, go and learn, go and study, and you'll learn everything you need to know there. The truth is, when we recognize the education system and all of that, it's not going to provide everything that we need. And so parents do have to have that active role. But I am very mindful that there are situations like broken homes, right? And I know tons of people that are raising kids on their own, single mums, and they're spending most of their hours under the sun working and even in the night working just to put food on the table. And so they don't actually have the capacity to sit down with their children and say, all right, you know, this is how we budget. You know what I'm saying? And that's not even a possibility because they're having to work and do, and it just goes to show the destructive nature of how such a broken society, when things are taken out of God's divine order, you know, like God's always been about, you know, just a husband and wife and kids, and both of them raising their kids together, you know, under that union. And that's where the next generation thrives. And sadly, with the breakdown of a lot of homes, we have this situation
where we're so reliant on schools.
Exactly. And all a parent can do in that situation is say, go to school, and in their mind they're hoping, they know they probably know that I need to give them more, but I just can't. You know what I'm saying? It's a sad situation, very sad situation.
And I definitely think, as like, I mean, it's not the responsibility, but one good thing, like you said, when there are Christians in a community that do have that conviction to make a difference and a change, we can make, like you said, supplementary schools and like opening up our homes to people. And I think that this is why God created us for community. Because even before this society where there's like broken homes for different reasons, there were situations where someone was widowed or whatever. And this is why community is so important, because sometimes the things you can't ordinarily pick up in school, you would be able to pick up from the community. And I think this is going into a whole different point, but living in such an individualistic society, that's where it doesn't benefit us. Because if we were more, and that's one thing I do love obviously about being a Christian and being in church, is you kind of have this extended family almost, where even if you're not, like, for example, you know, my parents are fantastic, they're amazing parents, but they've not necessarily had the most understanding of money and stuff like that. They taught us good basic skills of money, but not necessarily, like you said, in terms of like investing or like different accounts I could put my money in, savings account, like license and stuff like that. But for example, a lot of that I learned from like Benga and Hannah and stuff like that. But that's where community came into. But then like, I might have something else, like other skills I can offer to somebody else in church and stuff like that. So this is one of the benefits of, like we said, about being in a community. It gives us an opportunity to make up where others kind of, and that's, like you said, back to the whole idea of how God intended it to be. I think one of the things you mentioned, and the kind of the point I wanted to go into, is like, with money, it's always wise to think generational. I think one of the things that isn't talked about enough, or once again, is so countercultural to the society we see on social media, is that money shouldn't ever just be us thinking about the here and now. And I think a lot of the times people think about money and think about, okay, cool, I get maybe £2,000 a month. Okay, I'm gonna spend, like you said, 1,500 on it, on clothes and this and that, and have, you know. But people don't often think about the generational impact of money and how that can really set up your family and your children, and really bless them. And I think that is really, really important. And it's hard because once again, no one's taught that kind of stuff. You kind of have to go out of your way and find, how can I do this? Because like, even for example, and I was explaining this to my parents, I think, like, I was just basically saying, if you buy a house and the house is worth £1 million and you have this house and then you pass away, because of like inheritance tax, your kids can only get like, it gets like, I think it gets taxed at 45%.
It's
or
ridiculous.
Something, like 45%.
It's crazy.
So you only really get 500, like, so there's no point like leaving all your money in a house. But like you said, it like, these kind of generational things are things that we need to think about. Like, you've got to put it in shares and bonds and move it into certain accounts and make it accessible and kind of like liquidate it a little bit, because if it's all in one asset, because of generational inheritance tax, it's basically eaten up.
I mean, one of the sad realities, but we just got to face it as reality, is that there are some people that know the secrets, right? And there's some people that don't. And I think that's where, like we were saying, generationally, we need to ensure that we are passing on good financial wisdom and principles to the next generation, right? So there's no point in just storing up money for the next generation and you haven't taught them how to handle money. There's no point, right? Because that will be the ruin of them. If you just give them, it's the same thing as lottery ticket winners. They've never handled that money before. They see this money and like, boom, you know, give it a few years and they're broke again, right? And same thing will happen to the next generation if we fail to pass on the good financial principles to them. And there was a lady that spoke to me, one of my clients, you know, we were doing a job for her, and she mentioned a story of one of her friends who said, you know, she hasn't even, she went to the extreme of, she hasn't even written her kids into a will yet. And so she said, I'm not writing them into my will until I see how they've handled money first, because she said, her words were, I'd rather it go to charity, right, than it go to them and they're not ready to handle it. And she had, you know, considerable wealth. But just that thinking, that mindset that actually, you know, I'm more concerned about preparing them to handle money than just leaving them money. I think that's definitely got to be something, because indirectly the next generation, they look at our dealings with money and that becomes their template. One of my close family members said, you know, I remember at a young age seeing certain things at home, certain people come into the home at my mum's house, and they're always chasing my mum for money, and that kind of left the imprint on my mind about money and how to deal with money. And so that's one of the things we've got to be careful, directly and indirectly, what we're teaching to the next generation about finances.
Definitely. I think when it comes to perception of money, and like one thing you can do to like really bless your kids, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to bless your kids, but explaining to them the way money works, not just how to handle money itself, but how it works, it is such a blessing. Because to be honest, money comes and goes, and I'll see seasons of having much, and I'll have seasons of seeing little, but the mindset and perception is something that will stick with them. And that means that no matter the amount you give them, if you give them the knowledge on how to handle it, it can be a much more of a blessing than just giving them millions. Like,
definitely.
I think it's even like Bill Gates. I mean, he's still going to give his kids millions, but he's already said they're not getting, like, I think it's like 95% of his wealth is going to like charities or whatever.
Right.
And I mean, obviously Bill Gates is another case, but like, it's interesting because a lot of people that are really rich aren't like just willing to give their kids like ridiculous amounts of money. Like, it's the same thing. And it's like, well, you have to think to yourself, why are these millionaires and billionaires doing this? And it's because they understand that, like, it's about this kind of character that you can't just buy. You have to build.
It's that old quote, isn't it? Like, they say, what is it? You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for life. Right? And so, you know, you give someone a handout that will satisfy them for a little while. But if you teach them how to generate wealth, you teach them how to handle it, you teach them the principles of money, you're going to feed them for life, you know? Definitely. And I think that's the long-term versus short-term thinking. And that's really what kills a lot of people with money in different areas. It's whether you're thinking long-term or you're thinking short-term. Short-term is, I got my first paycheck, let me just buy loads of stuff for me. Long-term is, got my first paycheck, let me just start saving. You know what I'm saying? Short-term, you know, it's about me enjoying my life right now. Long-term, what about my kids? You know what I'm saying? What about the legacy? What am I teaching them? You know?
And just to kind of like wrap it up there, the only like one of my actual favorite scriptures as well, it's in it's in Proverbs. It says, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. And I feel like I loved scripture because it's like I think that's the NIV version. I think it's different in the New King James, but I like it because it's so true. It's like, I think it's mainly talking about how you gain money in terms of if you steal it and stuff like that. But also I in my head, I kind of also see it as the way you treat money too. Like if you just spend it on like ridiculous like material things, you know, it talks about like you store money and put it into bags with holes and you know, and I just think like that kind of thing, it dwindles away, like it just slowly goes. But if you gather money little by little and you're wise with it, the amount doesn't matter because it equates to much more in the long term. And I just love that scripture. I mean, obviously it's all down to perception, but
I think if I remember right, the New King James mentions he who labors and like you said, like storing away little by little. There's something about working for that money. Earning it honestly, not just trying to get the get rich quick scheme or anything like that. Just working away, learning the value of money, learning the principles of money, putting it in the right places, and over the long term, you will see more from that. This is the thing, is that we can't buy into the here and now, the hype of what's happening right now. When you're thinking about, you know, what you're going to do with money and how I'm going to allocate my money, think about how this financial choice is going to affect me 5-10 years from now. What's this going to do for me in 10 years? Is this going to make things easier in 5-10 years? Is it going to make things harder? Am I going to set myself up for failure with this just because I'm trying to impress some people around and stuff? Give it a bit of time. You'll see. You know, I know when we're in school, college, uni, and, you know, just starting out our working lives, our careers, everyone's on this hype, like it's a race, who's trying to, you know, get into certain places, certain goals first. Give it a bit of time. Give it about 10 years. Things start to smooth out. And those who've made good financial decisions, you will see it. You'll see it. And I don't know about, you know, everyone, but I know that there's going to come moments where for some they'll look back and it's like almost with a bit of a regret, man. I shouldn't have done those things. I shouldn't have been so hasty. I should have put more away. And there's some that will look back with rejoice and say, you know, it was painful at the time. I wasn't the popular person at the time. I didn't have everything I wanted at the time. But now I'm looking at it. I've got what I wanted out of life. And, you know, I've got some financial freedom. And you've really got to, when you're setting your goals and thinking about where you want to be, you've got to ask yourself, what do you want to see? What do you want to see in your life? What do you want to do for those around you? And just set yourself good financial goals to benefit you, your household, those around you, and things like that. And really just don't worry about what people say you should do. There's a lot of this going around, like people saying, oh yeah, I just did that, I just did that, and people buy into things because other people are doing it. One of the things that I got taught early about investment is that overall, really just generally speaking, to be successful in like investment, the markets, generally you've got to do the opposite of what everyone's doing, right? if everyone was doing the right thing, everyone would be millionaires. Everyone would be living large, but everyone isn't, right? And so one of the things I got taught early is that generally speaking, if it's time when everyone's selling, it's probably a good time to buy, right? If it's a time when everyone's buying, probably a good time to sell, right? And so, you know, they say about insanity is, you know, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you do the same thing as everyone else, well, you expect what everyone else has got. So, you know, a couple of things just to think about, you know, and just how I think you just got the main thing is you got to be in it for the long game. You've really got to be in it for the long game.
Wow, powerful. I've really learned a lot, and I hope that everyone listening has as well. I think it's been a fantastic episode. I really hope that you guys take some of those like tokens away and really think about it, and I hope it really influences your understanding of money. Pastor, thank you so much for coming on again. It's been a fantastic episode. And yeah, guys, join us next time, and thank you for listening. Bye.